Rick Pitino says that the point guard position's dead in college basketball. Well, Braden Smith would like to say otherwise. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Boilermakers.
You are Locked On Boilermakers, your daily podcast on the Purdue Boilermakers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Boilermakers. Thank you for joining me today on this fabulous Friday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get $150 with FanDuel when your first $5 bet wins. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. My name is Nick Arvin. I write about Purdue for 24/7 Sports, and we've got a jam-packed episode coming up for you guys today. And we're going to start right off. There's been some talk around the media, around the college basketball sphere about a guy, a head coach, who is long tenured, who has a lot of history in this league, and that is Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino goes on an interview yesterday, actually, and says, hey, the point guard position's dead in college basketball. And that there's a lot of controversy surrounding that. And I would like to say that I firmly disagree, because on my team, on the Purdue Boilermakers, we have one of the best point guards in the nation, one of the best point guards in college basketball history. And we're going to talk about that today. And that guy is Braden Smith. So Braden Smith, he's been here for 3 years. He's had success. He's been a part of this program. He's been a point guard for Purdue that Purdue and the Boilermakers have seen a lot of success under, a type of guy that Matt Painter has loved to have on his team for all the years that he's had him here. And Braden Smith is not just any other point guard. He's on pace to break the all-time assist record for college basketball. And that's something that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about on today's episode of Locked On Boilermakers. Not only is Braden Smith Purdue's all-time leading assist record holder, but he's only about 100 assists away from becoming the Big Ten record holder. He's exactly 132 assists away from beating Cassius Winston, Michigan State guard from a few years back, to obtain that assist record for the Big Ten. And even more so, he's on pace. He's at 758 career total assists right now, but he's only 318 assists away from besting Bobby Hurley. And we see all he needs to do is average about 8 assists a game this year. Hopefully he's healthy throughout most of the season. If he's able to average that amount of assists, he's going to become the NCAA all-time leading assist record leader. And that's something that needs to be talked about. When you talk about the point guard position, you think, hey, this is a playmaking position. When you talk about Braden Smith, you talk about a guy who can go get shots at the mid-range, a guy who can make plays happen in the pick and roll, whether that's to a big, whether that's spacing out the floor and hitting someone in the corner for a three. We've seen that with Braden Smith. We've seen last year he was able to average 8.9 assists on the year, and those are big numbers for a college guard. Those are big numbers for a point guard at the college level in the Big Ten. So you can say all you want coming from Rick Pitino, hey, that point guard position's dead. And I can see where he's coming from to a certain aspect. But when you look at Braden Smith, how can you say that the point guard position's dead in college basketball when he's producing at the level he's producing at, when he's getting his team to wins in the way that he's able to? We saw last year he was a key part of that team alongside with Fletcher Lawyer and Trey Kaufman-Rain, 3 starters that will be returning to this team this year. He's back, ready for his senior year, and he's ready to perform. So I expect for us to see a big year from Braden Smith. I expect for Braden Smith to be able to rack up those assists, averaging 8 assists a game in college. Like we said, that's a big number. That's a big feat. We saw him do it last year. We saw him average almost 9 assists a game. Will he be able to average 8 assists a game this year? We'll see. But he's going to put himself in a big title, cement himself as not just a Purdue legend, which he's already been for a couple of years, but he's going to cement himself in the record books as a college basketball legend. And that's something that when you talk about Braden Smith, when you talk about his legacy, we haven't seen him win a national championship yet. We saw him and his team make it to the national championship, fall just short against UConn a couple years back. But when you look at what this year could be, not just for Purdue, but for Braden Smith as a player, there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of expectations for Purdue when you look at them being the title favorites this year, them being the projected number one team in the polls whenever those come out here in a couple months. But this team's going to be very good this year, and Braden Smith is a key factor in that. He has the opportunity to take on this record. He has the opportunity to lead his team to wins, and he has the opportunity to lead his team to March Madness, to lead his team to success. I'm not saying that, hey, Braden Smith should be on National Player of the Year watch list. I think that he should personally, but I know how hard it is for a guard to win. But I know that he's going to be able to space the floor. I know that he's going to be able to make things happen in the pick and roll. I know he's going to be able to get Trey Kaufman-Rain and a couple centers and Oscar Clough and Daniel Jacobson involved down in the post. He's such a talented guard. He's a pure point guard. And Rick Pitino, a great coach, historic coach, Hall of Fame coach for a reason. But to go on the record, to go in an interview and say that the point guard position is dead in college basketball, that's just flat out untrue. And Braden Smith will show you this year. He showed you in the past. He showed you in the past 2 years, past 3 years, why that's untrue. He's the perfect point guard for this team. He's the perfect college basketball point guard. Maybe he's not a pure point guard in the sense of, hey, that's his first option, because he can make things happen in the mid-range. He can shoot threes. He can get the ball to the rim. He's a dual threat type of guy. You can say he's a combo guard, but I disagree. When you look at what he's been able to do, making plays, getting those passes, hitting those assists, you got to realize that, hey, this is the perfect guy to be a point guard in this league, to be a point guard in college basketball. You can describe it however you want, but I'm telling you right now that when I look at Braden Smith, when other people around the country look at Braden Smith, hey, people outside of Purdue might not like him, but we sure do, and we like him, and other people don't like him because of how talented he is, because of how aware he is of people on the court, how aware he is of his surroundings, how aware he is of his teammates, the opposing defenders, where he needs to fit balls into tight passing lanes. He has all the success in the world doing that. We saw him take a big jump last year in his production from the playmaking side of things, and he's just going to continue to jump. You bring in this talented front court this year. You bring in a transfer like Oscar Clough from South Dakota State. You get Daniel Jacobson back healthy after suffering that broken leg earlier into the season last year. When you have those talented bigs, obviously you have TKR, who was able to make plays at the center position last year, but you move him over to the power forward position. You bring these guys in to play center for you, and that's just going to increase his production this year. When you have those talented guys that aren't going to be able to be moved around in the post, that are going to be strong and firm, it brings up an opportunity for Braden Smith to pass that ball down low, to make it happen in the pick and roll. You got to realize Oscar Clough, one of the best pick setters in the nation. You're not moving that guy. He's burly, he's strong, and Oscar Clough is the perfect guy for Braden Smith, the perfect center. And we've seen him so far in summer camp cement himself as the starting center in that starting role, primarily because of the chemistry that he has with Braden Smith. So we see you add that front court, you add the ability to run the pick and roll, you add the ability for Braden Smith to pass that ball down into the post, and that creates opportunities on the outside, whether that's Omir Meyer, who we've seen be able to bang down three so far, whether that's in the FIBA World Cup or coming to Mackey in these practices, or whether that's Fletcher Lawyer, who we've seen an electric three-point shooter for Purdue, is able to space the floor the perfect way. We've seen it. Braden Smith, he has a huge jump in his production last year, and he's just going to continue to grow as a playmaker and as a scorer. Things open up for Braden Smith whenever you have the talent around him that you do this year. So you can say, coming from Rick Pitino, hey, the point guard position's dead, but Braden Smith is going to tell you, and he's going to show you on the court this year, that the point guard position is very much alive, and he may be the best point guard in the nation. We'll talk a little bit about the small forward position here in our next segment, but right after a quick ad break. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or even high stakes soccer, FanDuel is the best way to keep your games even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburnt on the beach. I've been using FanDuel, all the different promotions with the FedEx Cup playoffs on golf starting up. We got college football starting up. Want to hammer that Purdue football win total? Feel free to do that. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back if that bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. On this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the small forward position, the three spot for Purdue. It seems like as we stand here in August, every other spot in the starting position or in the starting roster has been filled out, whether that's at point guard. We talked about him earlier in the show, that being Braden Smith, whether that's at the 2 spot being Fletcher Lawyer, move over to the 4, that's Trey Kaufman-Rain. And then we've seen during summer practices, there looks there for a bit like there may be a little bit of a competition between Daniel Jacobson and Oscar Clough, but Clough has really stepped it up. He's really shown out his playmaking ability and his ability to rebound. And like we said, naturally talented at setting screens, at getting involved in the pick and roll. So that moves us over to the small forward position. And I think there's about 4 guys this year who are battling out throughout summer practice who have the potential to start at that small forward position. And the first one I want to talk about is Omier Mayer. So obviously he's a freshman guard, lottery projected coming into the 2026 NBA draft. So potentially a one and done type of guy, but he has potential to start at the small forward position. While most people think that obviously he's traditionally a guard, but this is a very guard heavy team this year. So one of these guards is going to have to move over to that small forward spot to make way going into this year for some of that guard room to really facilitate and leave some options at the wing position where it isn't as deep. So moving on to Mayer, we saw him at the U19 World Cup, an elite ball handler, an elite playmaker, averaging 20 points throughout that World Cup. We saw him against some elite competition. He's been battle tested against some of the best athletes in the Euro League. He played for the Euro League in Israel. So he's had that professional kind of competition. We've seen him so far get to West Lafayette. We saw him, instead of going to the CP3 camp, which he was invited to, he elected to stay in West Lafayette and kind of learn some of the stuff that he missed while he was participating in that World Cup. And I feel like that speaks a lot about who Mayer is, about who he wants to be, about what kind of player that he would like to be. So he averages 20 points on solid efficiency. He kind of slowed down a little bit in the later games. He had a little bit of a finger injury going on his shooting hand that may have affected some of his efficiency there. But we saw what he did, what he was able to do, albeit not against Big Ten competition, but against very good competition at his own age. The Big Ten is a whole different ball game. He's a young guy. He has all the potential in the world, but he's very big for his size. He's only 6'4", but he weighs in at 215 pounds. He has a solid frame. He's a lot bigger than a lot of people would expect, and that's why he's a solid candidate to run that small forward position, to slide over to that small forward position. He's one of those guys to be looking out, and I would say that he's one of the top 2, top 3 guys to look out for. So we move on from Omier Mayer, a great candidate, to CJ Cox. We saw CJ Cox, a guy who's really fit in for Purdue this year. He's a candidate to start at the small forward position. Didn't get a whole ton of action, started a little bit in the year, but then kind of got moved to a lesser role. Struggled with the 3 ball throughout the season. Throughout 15 games, though, he was averaging, or throughout 15 minutes, I apologize, was averaging about 6 points a game. On decent efficiency, he was averaging 1.7 assists a game, and that's something that I really do expect to see jump up this year. We talked about Braden Smith's production as a playmaker with those assist numbers increasing coming into this year with an increased amount of talent, and I think that CJ Cox is a guy that's really going to benefit from that. Weighing 6'3", 185. I don't necessarily see him moving over to the small forward position just because of his frame, because of his ability to get on defense. He's a great on-ball defender, great getting his hands in and getting a hold of those balls, getting steals in transition. He's great at that. That's something that he's very talented at, something that he's proven to be able to do as a defender. But against some of these talented wings in the Big Ten, against some of these talented wings in the country, I just don't know if Cox's frame will be enough for him to compete against some of these guys. He's a very talented guard, but I personally see his role as more of a combo guard, 1 type, 2 type guy, comes off the bench behind a Braden Smith, behind a Fletcher Lawyer, and is really able to produce off that bench unit, bring a spark to that bench unit, and really be a guy that can win those bench minutes and continue to produce off the bench. And I believe that his efficiency, his playmaking, his assist numbers will reflect that. So I would say Omier Meyer is a bit higher on my list of guys that will start at that small forward position over CJ Cox. But that brings us to another name, a guy that maybe doesn't have as much talk around him, red shirts last year, and that's a guy by the name of Jack Benter, a guy that a lot of people around West Lafayette really love, really admire his play set. Played a great game of basketball in high school, really starred out over there. So he brings his talents over to West Lafayette. We see a big guard room once again last year, something that Matt Painter has really enjoyed is having a surplus of guards. So he redshirts last year. But Jack Benter is a guy that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about that we need to start talking about. So 6'5", 215, can shoot the 3 ball, is a 3-level scorer, can shoot the ball from the mid-range, can take it to the hoop. I know we passed around that term 3-level scorer a lot, but he really is a guy that can really produce on the offensive side. And we'll talk a little bit about his defensive game. So he has that large frame, that you're kind of looking for in a small forward, in the Big Ten, in college basketball. And we've seen so far in summer practices, he's been paired up primarily against Trey Kaufman-Rain, and that's been something that's been very beneficial for him so far going into summer practices, heading into this season. When you put a guy like Jack Benter up against Trey Kaufman-Rain, when you allow him to develop his defensive skill set like that against a guy like that, a scorer with the ability of TKR, that's just going to benefit Benter in the long run, because who are you going to find in Big Ten play that is better than TKR from a scoring perspective? You're not. TKR is one of the best forwards in the nation. He's on Naismith Player of the Year watch list for a reason. He's going to be a star this year. He's going to keep improving. And when you have a guy like Jack Benter that's able to pair up against him in practices, albeit we're early in the offseason, we're just in August, so a lot of game to be played, but you have an experienced guy like that who can make it happen on the offensive side. He's developing as a defender. I feel like that's an absolutely great opportunity for Benter to plug into that small forward position. He doesn't have the experience that a guy that we're going to talk about next has, but he has the frame, he has the talent, and he has the defensive skill set to really make his name known in the Big Ten this year, to kind of have a breakout year, and maybe we'll see him starting at the small forward. So that moves us over to the last guy I want to talk about today, and the last real candidate for that starting position, and someone I think may just be the best candidate for that position, and that's Gicarri Harris. We saw him last year. He struggled a little bit from 3 throughout the year, but he was battle tested. We say that a lot, but he plays in those important games. He plays down the stretch in March Madness. He gives you that experience in Matt Painter's system that everyone talks about needing to have with a guy with a system as unique as Matt Painter. And we saw him struggle, but that's been something that he's really been focusing on, and something that has been notable throughout summer camps. Gicarri Harris has been consistently working on that 3 ball. Like I said, only averaged 31% from that last year. So not great efficiency, but he's working on it. That's something that he's rapidly trying to improve. That's a part of his game that he desperately wants to get better at. And I feel like Matt Painter sees that. I feel like he sees the improvement. And I think Gicarri Harris will improve. You have playmakers like a CJ Cox, like a Braden Smith, like a Fletcher Lawyer. So when you have those playmakers, the 3 ball is going to fall. CJ Cox gets the ball in his hands, and I could see him becoming a very pivotal part of this team and could really fit into that wing spot, be a guy that could really produce for Purdue. So he made a lot of key defensive plays last year, especially against that Indiana team we talk a lot about. He goes up for that block, and that's a pivotal play. We've seen him make big plays on the defensive side of the ball. He's a great point of attack defender. He's exactly what you want for Matt Painter, for this Purdue team. And I believe that he's a great, excellent choice when you're looking at who's going to start at small forward this year. He's battle tested. He plays up against Houston. He has some big games last year. That's a guy that's going to plug in at 6'4", 200 pounds, not quite as big as a Jack Benter. And I believe that Jack Benter is going to have a great year himself. But when you talk about that size, when you talk about, hey, this is probably our second best option from a defensive side of things, when you talk about a frame, I think Gicarri Harris is a great option. And I'm not going to speak for Matt Painter. I don't know what's going through Matt Painter's head, but I have an idea. I know that he loves who Harris is. I know that he loves who Harris is as a player. So when we look from an August standpoint, when we look at who's probably going to be starting at small forward, I think that Harris is the guy. I know Meyer's going to be pivotal for this team, going to be playing a lot of minutes, going to be great from an offensive standpoint, from a playmaking standpoint, and I'm not discrediting that. Meyer is so talented. He's going to be an NBA lottery pick for a reason. But when you're able to have a guy like CJ Cox playmaking off the bench, when you're able to have a spark like Meyer off the bench, and you're able to throw in a defender like a Gicarri Harris to that 3 spot to pair with the offensive production of a TKR, a Fletcher Lawyer, a Braden Smith, that gives you the perfect opportunity to build. That gives you the perfect opportunity to have a defensive guy that really plugs into that 3 spot. And I feel like we're going to see success with that. We see that Purdue has the roster. It's all about putting guys in where they're going to find the most success. And obviously, we've seen Gicarri Harris play more of a guard position in the past, but I believe that you throw him into the 3 spot, let him see what he can do, and I think we'll find success there. So we'll talk a little bit more about that this offseason. So a quick little preview. We got Gicarri Harris kind of penciled in so far to go alongside Braden Smith at the 1, Fletcher Lawyer at the 2, TKR at the 4, and Oscar Clough, who's really made his name known so far at the 5. We'll talk a little bit about football here on this next segment, but right after a quick ad break. So on a primarily basketball episode, we're going to throw a little bit of football action your way today on Locked On Boilermakers. We've been talking a lot on some of the football episodes just about what Barry Odom wants to do for Purdue, kind of how he wants to build this program, and what would be a good threshold for Barry Odom and his team going into year 1 of the program. And primarily what I've talked about, what some other people have reciprocated, is that a bowl game may be the priority here. It may be a good threshold. Obviously, FanDuel, our partners, have Purdue's total win total set at 3.5 games. That's something that I think that they'll easily be able to surpass. But we're going to go down the schedule. I'm going to give you guys some interesting insights into kind of what I think about the schedule, kind of what some interesting things, and something that I tweeted out earlier today. There's been a lot of talk about Miami. Miami doesn't have to leave the state of Florida until November, which is absolutely insane to me. I don't know how we're doing that in schedules, but if you look at Purdue's schedule, you get Ball State, you get Southern Illinois at home week 2, you get USC at home week 3. We'll talk a little bit more about that game. Then you travel to South Bend, Indiana for Notre Dame week 4. That's a tough one, but then you come right back. You got Illinois at home. That'll be a good game. And then bye week, and you travel to Minnesota week 7. So for those of you that may not have put it together, Purdue doesn't have to travel outside of the state of Indiana until week 7, which is absolutely insane to me and should be a benefit to Purdue for Barry Odom and his team that are trying to get adjusted to a new landscape of college football, trying to get adjusted to some guys that most of these players have never played with before. It's a completely revamped roster, completely rebuilt team, and we're going to see a bit of an adjustment period this year. But thankfully for Purdue, you get 2 easy games to start. Ball State, a rebuilding team, new head coach this year. You go into that game and you should pull out a W, and then go into week 2. You get Southern Illinois. That's an FCS program, a good FCS program at that. But you're expected to win that game. You should have won that game. And that brings us up to week 3 against USC. That's a game that we're going to talk a lot about on this show throughout the offseason, because that game is going to decide Purdue's season. That game's scheduled to be on CBS at a 2:30 time slot, and for a good reason. You bring the Trojans to Ross-Ade. We've seen Jaden Maiava. We've seen him in the offseason. Lincoln Riley has a history of developing these Heisman-type guys, and he looks like another one. He's projected via FanDuel to be our passing leader throughout the Big Ten this year. We'll see what plays out with that, but you bring that explosive offense to Ross-Ade. Purdue coming off of 2 wins earlier in the year. That'll be a psyched-up team. That's going to be a big game, and a game that really kind of decides how this season goes for Purdue, a game that really decides how the season's going to go for Barry Odom. If you're able to pull that game out, which I think Purdue can. We saw some struggles last year with USC with that run defense. We see Devin Moccabi, who's less than 1,200 yards away from being Purdue's all-time leading rusher. We know that Barry Odom is a hard-nosed type of guy that loves his running game, that loves to build a team that can produce on the run. And I think that that's a game that's very winnable. You may say, hey, USC has more talent on the field. They may have more higher-rated guys out of high school, higher-rated transfers, but you play the games for a reason. You play the games for a reason. You bring them to Ross-Ade and what's going to be a crazy environment at a primetime game, if you can say that, at a 2:30 spot. But that's a good national televised game for Purdue. And that'll really be, we talk about this offseason, hey, Purdue's not getting the respect that they deserve. That's the game where you earn it. You earn the respect week 3 against USC. You prove that you're here. You prove that you're here to stay. And you prove that you're a competitive football team. So that game will be one to watch for Purdue fans, one that we talk a lot about. You move week 4 going to South Bend. That's a tough environment to play in. We saw Notre Dame in the national championship last year. They have a new quarterback. We don't know if they'll be able to produce at the level of Riley Leonard, but we shall see. Carr has been making some plays over there in South Bend so far this offseason, but obviously you can't necessarily expect to win that one for Purdue. That's going to be a tough game, a tough environment. But then you move on. You move on to Illinois. Illinois, under Luke Altmaier, they really broke out last year. We saw Ryan Brown plug in against Illinois at Illinois and take that game into overtime last year. And so this year, Illinois comes into Ross-Ade. They come to Purdue, and that'll be another big game. So if you're able to pull out 4 out of 5 of these games, if you're able to go into your bye week 4-1, what else can you ask for Purdue? I know that's not necessarily the most realistic standpoint I'm coming from, but these games are winnable. We haven't seen Barry Odom step on the field yet. We haven't seen his team make their way onto the field yet. We haven't seen them produce against this Big Ten team, against these Big Ten teams yet. And you can say, hey, Barry Odom hasn't produced, but we haven't had the opportunity to see that. So who's to say that he's not going to bring out a team like Kurt Segnetti did over at Indiana last year and start winning games? I'm not going to jump the gun and say that. These UNLV transfers he's brought over, they've been playing real well throughout summer practices. So I definitely see a world where Purdue can go into that bye week, go 4-1. And that's a world that we live in. So then you move on and you have a easy month of October. I hate to say that because Purdue went 1-11 last year. So I'm not trying to discredit any of these Big Ten teams, but these are some games that are winnable. You have Minnesota at Minnesota. That's a winnable game. You have Northwestern at Northwestern. That's a winnable game. Northwestern didn't do a good job stopping the run last year. Then you take on Rutgers at home in your homecoming game. That's a big game. Rutgers, that's a rebuilt program. They're trying to really bring back some of the success that they saw in the Big East. So we'll have to see. I expect Rutgers to be improved this year. But that's a winnable game. You go down that stretch of 3 games after the bye week, and who's to say you don't win 6 games? Like, who's to say that you don't win 6 games by week 9? You start out. I'm not going to say that Purdue's going to go 7-1 throughout those first 8 games, but who's to say they don't go 6-2? Those are plenty of winnable games. plenty of winnable games for Purdue. That last month of the schedule is absolutely brutal. You take on Michigan in Ann Arbor. You take on Ohio State at Ross-Ade, at Washington versus Indiana. So the end of that schedule doesn't get much easier. But if you talk about what to expect for Purdue, if you think, hey, a bowl game is completely out of the question, I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Purdue's schedule down the stretch towards the end of the season is absolutely brutal. But there are winnable games in those first 2 months. There are winnable games before that bye week. The month after that bye week, you can win all of them. If you have an improved team under Barry Odom, if Barry Odom is who he claims to be, if that team is what we expect that team to be, there's no reason that Purdue can't win games, can't be a bowl team. They have the schedule. They have the team. They have the coach. I expect Purdue to be in a bowl game this year, and I think that the schedule allows for it. We'll talk way more about that week 3 matchup against USC. That'll be something that we talk a lot about on this show because, like I said, that really may make or break the season. So we'll have more football content coming for you up on this next week. I hope everyone has a great Friday. Thank you so much for joining us once again this morning on Locked On Boilermakers. I appreciate all of your support as we get this show launched our first week. If you made us our first listen today, I really appreciate you guys. For your second listen, go ahead and check out the Portal Show. Braden Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the most informed fan on the rapid changes coming on throughout the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you, guys. And as always, boiler up, hammer down.